Kia ora and welcome to the Niche Case Variety Show. We're coming at you Monday, August 23, and Aotearoa is up to its neck in a lockdown, but a Delta COVID floating around. So we are here to set the scene of all the Aotearoa sporting action that is still happening outside of Aotearoa, and to be honest, most of our niche case sporting action is happening outside of Aotearoa, so there is still a lot of sport and a lot of fun to be had. We always write about Kiwi sports at the niche-case.com, plenty of good yarns to be had over there, lots of deep dives, lots of explorations, lots of stats and notes and good Kiwi sporting shit to read, so check that out. And if you do like what the Niche Case is doing and you want to support us on our mission to broadcast Aotearoa's sporting excellence, support us via Patreon, patreon.com/lnichecase, E-L, nichecase. Kia kaha to all our patrons, and that's just straight up the guts, good support, straight to the Niche Case. Every Monday and Friday we deliver a email banger as well, where it's just all the good Niche Case content straight to your email, as well as some extra yarns that are always bonus juiciness and goodness of vitamins, fruits and vegetables about Kiwi sporting action. Sign up to that at the Niche Case or www.thenichecase.substack.com. Whack in your email. All done. No worries. Monday, Friday afternoon. It's all yours. There is only one place to start a podcast from the Niche Case. Wobbly Wildcard, what have you got in this lockdown of mindfulness?
Lockdown of mindfulness. I can't remember what triggered it, but I am like this close to going on another Joseph Campbell binge. So I've whipped up I just Joseph Campbell Google search, click on the quotes box, and honestly, like, I could pick any one of these and they are all fantastic quotes. I'm just going to rip off the first one, which says, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." There you go. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
That's a quintessential, like, what you don't want to do is where you get the results, you know, like a hard mahi gets the treats type of thing, but also facing your fears is where you get the results as well.
Yep, challenge yourself, go beyond your comfort zone. You don't get the rewards by sort of shrinking away from a challenge, all those kind of good areas.
Good areas indeed. Speaking of good areas, this is the theme of the episode is just setting the table. We're setting the table. We've got a buffet of Kiwi sporting goodness, and no matter the dramas, no matter the headlines, whether it's Kiwi sports related or not Kiwi sports related, we still have a lot of Kiwi sport to enjoy despite what is happening in Aotearoa. And good areas is a great place to start because creeping beneath the radar wildcard, we have some cricket popping up. We have the Black Caps tour of Bangladesh. That starts this Sunday with a tour game, a warm-up game. And then Wednesday, the 1st of September, you've got the T20 series starting. 5 T20 games between Bangladesh and the Black Caps. As we know, this Black Cap squad is a bit of a B group, in all honesty. But we do have that to look forward to. So there is Black Caps cricket coming up. Kind of under the premise that this current lockdown is going to go on for a while, just with all the shenanigans happening. So Wednesday the 1st of September is when the Black Caps start their tour of Bangladesh, and that's going to be lots of fun. We also have the White Ferns starting their series and their tour of England next Thursday with I think they've got 3 T20 internationals and 5 ODI games against England. Not overly hopeful about that and what's going to happen for the White Ferns over there, but it's still more cricket, still New Zealand playing cricket, so that's fun and exciting. Doesn't help us right now, doesn't help us this week wildcard, but we do have some cricket sparking up next week to look forward to.
Who'd have thunk it, eh? Back on the cricket buzz. And it's pretty interesting cricket too. Like, it's not necessarily it's a couple steps down from the Black Caps playing a World Test Championship, but it's the start of the I won't say the start of the preparation for the World T20s, but it's like the ramping up of the like this, I don't know, the home straight, the rounding that last corner sort of thing, and might take a little while to get up into speed, to get up into that final sprint. We'll say maybe treat it like a 1,500 meter race, and we'll say it's the start of the last lap rather than the last bend sort of thing. But like, that's real interesting, because it's always real interesting when you get an opportunity to see, like, we know who the top Black Caps guys are. It's always interesting, therefore, to see what the like when other guys get an opportunity below that, and like who takes those opportunities, who pads their stats out and demands further selection. Like, there's always one or two kind of, so we don't often get these kind of situations where you get like full internationals with what is effectively a second 11, but like, when it does come around, there's always going to be someone who steps up and stakes a claim, and that's going to be funky to see, let alone the fact that like they're touring some very like curious and enjoyable places, and that's always a challenge and just something that's kind of fun as a fan to watch. Like, when New Zealand are in the subcontinent, it's always an experience for sure. And then with the White Ferns, like, this is, I don't know, like, you wrote a pretty excellent piece on the White Ferns looking at some of the pathways the other day, and how like the development players aren't necessarily the players who are being picked for these kind of opportunities, and how things just don't seem to quite be in alignment of the way things are going. And that fits into what has been like a multi-year kind of decline, I suppose. Like, it got to the point definitely where the White Ferns have been relying on 2 to 3, maybe 4 like world-class players who often aren't all playing at the same time because of injuries and various things. And if those players do well, the team does well. If those players don't do well, the team does not do well. And it sort of got to that point of over-reliance. And then we had like, Amy Satterthwaite was out for a while, wasn't she? Because she gave birth, and like Susie Bates was injured for pretty much the entirety of last season, and Sophie Devine and Amelia Kerr have both had time out from the team, and like, it has exposed what was already a vulnerable sort of, it's not even like a vulnerable underbelly, it's just like a vulnerable belly. And that has been kind of, I don't know, it's probably because like, on the one hand, let's be honest, because it's women's sport and it's not getting as much profile as it should. And then on the other, they're like the, option 2 as well, or factor 2. Is that it has happened, like, this decline from the White Ferns has happened at the same time as the Black Caps have been going in the opposite direction, and like making a Cricket World Cup final and winning the Test Championship, and this kind of thing has maybe made it look like New Zealand cricket is in a New Zealand cricket, not the entity, but the sort of the psychic idea, cricket in New Zealand is in a glorious perfect state where it's like, well, on one side of the coin, it's in the best state it's ever been in. On the other side of the coin, it's like there's been this drastic drop. And I wonder if this tour to England might be a sort of watershed moment where, if they do get thrashed, as they might well happen, like, hopefully not, hopefully we get some like couple breakout players there as well, some big performances, some great results. But if that doesn't happen, and form would suggest that it probably won't, then I wonder if that will be something that suddenly thrusts that situation into a little bit more light, or maybe the fact that it's in England and it's not as like, it's not going to be on at nice times of the day, and maybe not going to get the same coverage as a home series would. Maybe that'll mean it gets swept under the rug some more. I'm not sure which one of those will happen, but either way, some of the writing that you can read on the Nishkash is highlighting things that nobody else seems to at the moment.
Yeah, like, just taking out all the context around the White Ferns, it's just such a strange, like, so I'm fascinated by like development and recruitment. Like, it's all we've done deep dives into the New Zealand Warriors development pipeline, Kiwi-NRL recruitment from Aotearoa, and these angles fascinate me. So if I just said like New Zealand cricket created women's development contracts and then gave them out to 8 players, and only one of those players has moved into the White Ferns, while 3 or 4 other players who have either made their White Ferns debut or have been called up for the squad to play to England, they don't have development contracts. So it's like, it's you can get into the weeds about like whether it's good or bad, but it's just strange. Like, what's New Zealand cricket made these development contracts, but the White Ferns aren't selecting players from the development contracts. So where's the hole in talent identification? Like, at what end? So it's really strange. England women, they've been playing cricket. They've been playing in the 100. They're in the middle of their summer. The White Ferns have not been playing cricket. They've just been training. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. England absolutely destroyed the White Ferns in Aotearoa on home soil. The same place where the World Cup is going to be next year. So we'll see how that pans out. And to tie the two together, you mentioned like the touring Black Caps. We're used to the Black Caps bullies in Aotearoa. Now they go to Bangladesh. Bangladesh just defeated Australia in a T20 international series. So for both teams, it's like, here is a adverse scenario. More so for the Black Caps, but for both teams, it's a really big challenge ahead of them. The White Ferns in England, second best team in the world. White Ferns are on the decline. Black Caps, everyone's hot and frothing over the Black Caps, but they're taking a B team to Bangladesh where conditions are difficult and Bangladesh are on fire. So that is really interesting, both of them, with regards to New Zealand cricket, because as you said, everyone loves New Zealand cricket right now, but there are some interesting things happening with the context of those two tours. More up to date here, Wildcard, and we are going to record a special Flying Kiwis podcast in the coming days, and we'll also record NRL podcast, Kiwi-NRL podcasts coming through into the finals of the NRL as well. So we don't need to go too deep into Flying Kiwis or NRL business, but these are two major areas of Kiwi sport that are trucking along regardless of any New Zealand lockdown matters. Obviously, the Flying Kiwis are playing all around the world, and football, not only are there just like high numbers around the world from Aotearoa, men and women, but we also have some emphatic performances, Wildcard. And as a bit of a teaser for the full Flying Kiwis podcast, I think we just like focus on Sarpreet Singh for a second here. That goal he scored, you put the video out on our Twitter and Facebook and Instagram pages. The cross, gets the rebound without breaking stride. He like traps the ball, glorious first touch, and then smashes a winner home. I was actually, obviously locked down, I was watching a bit of AFL yesterday, and as people might be able to envision a game of AFL, dude gets the ball, he's running, he's sprinting, and he approaches that 50-meter line where most players, like, that's their range to kick a goal. And I only saw like I was flicking between different sports, and I just caught this moment where it was this young player, and he was sprinting, and he slowed down perfectly so that he could actually kick a 50-meter goal without being chased down. So he's sprinting away from the defender, but you can't boom a goal kick while you're sprinting. Like, that's not how it works. Like, even in soccer, like, you can't sprint with the ball for 20 meters and mid-sprint hammer home a shot into the top right. So he's like sprinting to get away from the defender, and then he perfectly assesses the distance, and he slows down just a tad to get his feet under him, to get into his flow for his kick. And I say that because, like, if you're Sarpreet Singh, he was chasing a sky-high ball, and he's running. I don't know if he was necessarily sprinting, but he beat everyone else to the ball. And while he's running and beating everyone to the ball, he traps the ball perfectly and scores. Just talk us through like that goal, put it into the context of where Sarpreet Singh is at right now. He's obviously not with Bayern Munich. He's out on loan, but he is definitely catching the eye of yourself and many Kiwi football fans.
Yeah, he's in the last year of his contract at Bayern Munich, the initial contract that he signed. And therefore, to use an American sports terminology, we're coming into we are into a contract year for Sarpreet Singh. So it's pretty important. Like he's either got to prove that he's good enough for Bayern Munich to re-sign him, or he's got to prove that he's good enough to, get the best possible move elsewhere if they don't want to re-sign it. And like coming off his first season where everything just seemed to flow and he made just the next step each time. So like, everything was sort of like him running up and taking that ball in stride on the sprint there, where it's like everything just sort of fell nicely. And that was like great while it happened. It was not what happened in the second season though, where he went on loan to the second division to try and get like recurring game time, played for FC Nuremberg and didn't actually play a whole lot, and he was sort of not used very well, and the team struggled at the start of the season, and therefore they kind of didn't want to play an extra attacking midfielder, and he kind of got squeezed out midway through the season. He just returns to Bayern on loan because it's not working here. Plays pretty well. Like he was one of the best players for Bayern's reserve team the rest of the season, but not good enough that they were able to avoid relegation, and therefore he's given the option basically of playing like fourth tier football and kind of effectively rotting in the reserves. So it's just not. He'd be playing at a lower level than what he'd been playing the year before, which is not how you catch the eye of scouts and stuff, and certainly not something that's gonna not a level of ambition that's going to impress your parent club, the new coach at Bayern, Julian Nagelsmann. That's not gonna that's not gonna do the trick right there. So you got to get out on loan somewhere. Goes back to the second division with Jan Regensburg, who the thing with Nuremberg is that they used to be a big powerful club, and they sort of have, even though they've been stuck in the second tier for a while, they have ambitions of being better than that. And so when they struggled at the start of the season, there wasn't much rope given to loanee youngster from Bayern Munich. With Regensburg, it's different because they came into the season being like, we just need 40 points, avoid relegation, sweet as. Well, they're already a quarter of the way through that after 4 rounds, because they've won 4 games in a row, also through to the second round of the DFB Pokal, which is the German Cup. It's just been an incredible start from Regensburg. Like they've been really good. They've not just been winning, they've been smashing teams. Like they've got like a 2-0, a 3-0, the most recent game was a 4-1 win. Like they've been winning nice and comfortably, not conceding hardly any goals, and scoring like multiple goals every game as well. And Sarpreet Singh's been involved in all of that because he started every match for them. He has a goal contribution in every one of those games. So 5 games in, including the cup game, I think he's got 2 goals and 4 assists. We were getting close to breaking that streak against Schalke on the weekend. Schalke, another one of those clubs, just like Nuremberg, but even more recently, I think they were second in the Bundesliga like 4 years ago, and meaning they were playing Champions League about 3 years ago, and then they got relegated in last place with like 3 wins out of 33 games or whatever it is, 34 games in the German season. They won 3 times and got relegated by like a considerable margin between them and second to last. So I don't know what's happened to Schalke, but there's quite a few of those sort of like Werder Bremen are another one, the team that Sarpreet Singh made his debut against in the Bundesliga for Bayern Munich, and the team that Winston Rufer famously played for and won titles with. I think they got relegated as well. I'm pretty sure. There's quite a few of those teams to where like the second coming into the season, the Bundesliga 2 was being talked about like this is the most competitive second tier it's ever been, and you know how things are in the Bundesliga 1, where Bayern Munich are going to win it most years. If they don't win it, every 5 years or something, Borussia Dortmund might win it. But there's not a lot of surprise when it comes to the top of the table there. The second tier was talked about like this could be like better than the top tier. Like look at all these big clubs that have found themselves relegated over the last couple years. Just think about like some of the derbies and the rivalries that are going to be played and the crowd sizes that you're going to get in second tier football in Germany. They're talking about how big it is. And here's this club, SS Ferns, who are like talking about all we need to do is avoid relegation, and a month into the season they sit on top of the table. And if you look at like the WhoScored.com ratings, Sarpreet Singh is the top rated player in the entire competition through 4 games. Like he's been absolutely brilliant for them. He's playing really steady. Like I watched the entirety of that game on the weekend. It was a really enjoyable game. It was fun to watch how that team plays. Like Singh is just first of all he's been in Germany for 2.5 years now. Like he's looking as fit as he ever has. Like you get that much access to those Bayern Munich gym facilities and their sports science team and their trainers and everything. You're gonna start to see the benefits after a while. And he's looking strong. He's looking fit. He's looking fast. All these things. Definitely that was a priority when he first got to Germany. They were saying he's a little bit too weedy. We're gonna have to strengthen this fella up. Well, it looks like they're doing that pretty nicely. But it's also the way he's playing. He's getting involved, but he's not trying too hard to get involved. Like he's playing his role. He's getting the ball where it needs to go. He's facilitating things. I think also I was peeking through those WhoScored stats. He's also tied for first in terms of key passes made. I think he's like 14 of them in 4 games, which is also just another like really high rate of efficiency, effectiveness, all those things. He's he's looking confident, for sure. And then I think maybe one of the more impressive things as well, when you talk about getting a young guy on loan with something to prove from a club like Bayern Munich, you want to see them really fighting and showing that they're desperate to make this opportunity work. They're desperate to get back and into that Bayern first team and you know show what they can do at that level. They want to prove themselves. And then when you look at like Sarpreet Singh, for example, in that Schalke game, being the dude who covered more ground in terms of like distance run than any other player in that match, well, I think that shows you that he's working pretty bloody hard in that side of things as well. And combine all those things together, and this is pretty bloody fun to watch what Sarpreet Singh is doing, right? He's like, I mean, I don't want to put everything in the context of how it goes at Bayern Munich, because I think if this was just like, if this is the peak of his career in Europe, well, it's a pretty decent peak. It's like the second tier of Germany is no slouch league, and he's dominating it right now. And it's like he's done this sustained for 4 straight games. Hopefully it continues for the whole season. But even if it doesn't, like the last month of his football has been astounding, and it's been so much fun to watch. And like that alone is reward for the work that he's been putting in. And if that leads to further up, like if he sustains that for the rest of the season, if that leads to more opportunities at Bayern Munich, then sweet as, like that is also incredible. But I don't want the shadow of that to crowd out the context of what he's doing specifically just in the last few games, because it's been some big time stuff. We get a lot of Kiwi footballers who do excellent things in decent leagues, like there's no shortage of those, but to do it every single game at a league like that is relatively rare. Saying this is the dude who writes the Flying Kiwis beat, like that's what Sarpreet Singh is doing is pretty special at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you took the Bayern connection out of the equation, it's like just as interesting as having that big club backing you. Like just the mere fact that Bayern Munich signed Sarpreet Singh can impact and influence the whole context of the situation. And if you took that out and you're just dealing with Sarpreet Singh, the footballer dominating the German second division, as you said, that is pretty damn cool. We will go deep into the Flying Kiwis section of the niche cache in the coming days, and we'll update all the men and women around the world from Aotearoa who are still playing football. Just a couple quick notes on stuff that has happened. Lydia Ko finished tied for 29th at the Women's Open in Scotland. So that came after 3 top 10 finishes in a row, including an Olympic medal. So it wasn't the best from Lydia Ko, but it's like understandable. She's had a good patch. And then tied for 29th isn't even that bad, so no worries. I think she's going to take a little break here. And if we are setting the table for Kiwi Sporting Goodness, this break will likely see Lydia Ko. There's 3 tournaments in September, so I'm not sure how many of those tournaments she is going to play. Although the next tournament doesn't start until next Thursday. So if she took like 2 weeks off from now, she can still play 2 tournaments in September. And then you've got a full menu to finish out 2021. You've got 4 tournaments in October, including a little trip to Asia. And then you've got 3 tournaments in November. So there's a big back end of the year for Lydia Ko, tied for 29th in Scotland at the Women's Open, which is a major tournament. And I think we're going to be a bit quiet for Lydia Ko over the next week or 2. And then we'll swing back around to see what she's up to. Genah Fabian lost her fight against Kayla Harrison in the PFL playoffs, which is mixed martial arts. Genah Fabian is from Team City Kickboxing. She is the best women's fighter at City Kickboxing. Unfortunately, the City Kickboxing style was on display in that fight against Harrison, and that basically means City Kickboxing has world-class striking and good enough takedown defense to keep the fight in a striking battle and defend those bad positions that you might find yourself in after a takedown. Kayla Harrison, though, she's won Olympic gold medals in judo, and she basically did what she wanted to do in that fight. So I'm not sure where Genah Fabian goes from here. There'll be another PFL tournament next year. We'll keep track of that moving forward. And we also have a fight announced here for Dan Hooker. He is in action in September. It just got announced yesterday, I think. He is set to fight a bloke by the name of Nasrat Hakparast, who I think is from Germany. So he might know Sapri Singh. This is at UFC 266, September 25th, probably September 26th, New Zealand time, so it's a wee way away. This is interesting because we've got Team City Kickboxing preparing for a big back end of 2021 after a quieter period where they didn't have many fights. Now they should have lots of fights coming up, but we'll have to see how the COVID stuff in New Zealand impacts what they can do overseas. Probably not going to have an impact for Dan Hooker, who does have this fight booked. It's a dip down. It's not a top tier bout, but it's a good regrouping opportunity for Dan Hooker. But all that UFC stuff is... We might have some announcements to keep an eye on, but we've got another couple of weeks where nothing much is happening there. And that also applies to New Zealand Breakers, Wellington Phoenix, and Steven Adams. All that stuff is kind of coming up. It's not exactly watch this during lockdown, stay interested in this during lockdown. It's kind of like it's coming up on the future. The Breakers are signing players by your account, Wildcard. The Wellington Phoenix obviously trying to juggle all whatever the fuck they're doing as far as signing players and preparing for an A-League season. And Steven Adams doesn't start in the NBA with the Memphis Grizzlies until mid-October. So just stuff like all of that stuff falls under the same umbrella. We've got the Kiwi UFC action, the New Zealand Breakers, the Wellington Phoenix, especially where we're looking for announcements, we're looking for news, we're looking for signings, fights scheduled, and logistical stuff to actually make that all happen, right?
Yeah, pretty much. There is some stuff to say, I suppose, about, like, I did write a thing of the Wellington Phoenix's preseason, a little, within the week before the lockdown started, and that, like, nothing has changed there, obviously. They've had to smack the big old pause button. Breakers I am going to write something about the Breakers in the coming days, because there is some, like, couple interesting wrinkles. The thing I haven't been able to figure out yet, for one thing, is, like, why it took about a month after when it was first reported by people who know what they're talking about, like the top-notch Aussie NBL reporters, about Peyton Siva signing with the Breakers and then Hugo Besson. And Siva was only announced on the weekend. He's already in New Zealand because he had been tweeting about it about 2 weeks ago that he was catching a plane to New Zealand. So, like, it wasn't a secret. I don't know why they took so long to announce it. Even after he got here, they didn't do it straight away. My best guess is that they were waiting to announce it after announcing that Corey Webster was leaving, and they didn't exactly do it. I didn't think they did a particularly great job of sending off Corey Webster, to be honest, but you can pick holes in the Breakers media team from top to bottom. There's plenty of ammunition there. They're not exactly the they're not exactly the I don't want to like. I was going to say not the most well functioning. It's not well functioning in that they don't do what they're trying to do. It's just that maybe the intentions are a little bit strange with the way the Breakers do things, but. Yeah, that season doesn't start till November either, so I will write about it, but it's not really not particularly podcast worthy at the moment. I will mention just looking up to like find the specifics on how Tom Walsh did on the weekend, because it's one of those funny things with athletics where like the Olympics have just been on. And that's like the peak. That's the pinnacle. That's what you're aiming for. And Walshy coming out of there with a medal as well, like sweet as. But it's you go from that huge high of the Olympics, and then it's just straight back onto the tour, and like right back. You forget that this is a day job for these dudes. So there was a Diamond League meeting in America, which he was at, competing alongside mostly Americans. Not a huge, like, stretch of dudes, like, that actually were there. The Darlan Romani was the other non-American who was there, the Brazilian guy who came, I think he came fourth at the Olympics. And there's kind of, like, I was watching Tom Walsh's pre-event press conference there, and he basically said, like, there's 4 of us dudes who are just kind of better than everyone else at the moment, and that's the motivation, is to do as well as you can within that quartet. But like, you know, the same 3 dudes won gold, silver, and bronze in 2016 as won gold, silver, and bronze in the same order in 2021. Only the distances were considerably longer in Tokyo. So that like shows you what's going on there. And poor old Darlan Romani is like on the edge of the quartet, but he actually he did pretty well. I think he got a 3rd place in the Wanda Diamond League in Eugene, which I think is in Oregon. So where are we with? I had the distances up there, but I flipped the page over. But Tom Walsh threw a 21:39, so not anywhere near what he's capable of, and that meant he was sitting in 3rd place and likely to get the bonus round attempt, but like because they do it a little bit differently here, the format, than how they do it at the Olympics. Top 3 just get another round and see who wins from there. But no surprises, Ryan Krauser won comfortably, and pretty much every throw he threw was better than basically anyone else could manage. Joe Kovacs was the little wild card guy there because he, the two-time Olympic silver medalist, fouled out, I think, like 5 of his first 6 throws or something like that, but then managed to pip Tom Walsh with the one throw that was actually valid. So he went into the last round, and Tom Walsh slipped into 4th place. So not quite the points tally he would have hoped for, but it's a busy time for a lot of these Diamond League athletes, where it's just like from there straight on to the next thing. I'm thinking of writing something about this like men's shot put quartet as well, because it's a pretty funky thing how these dudes are just like the 4 of them are just like the top 4 in various various arrangements at basically every major meet that they all go to. And it's the same guy, number 1 as well. Ryan Krauser is basically the greatest shot putter of all time. You know, he's won 2 consecutive Olympic gold medals, and he is the world record holder as well. So you don't really compete with that when he's on his form. Nobody can touch him, and he's usually on form because he's the best for a reason. He doesn't foul off very many, and when he does throw, like, pretty much everything that gets measured is better than most of what everyone, like, his lower throws are at the top end of what guys like Walsh and Kovacs and Romani are capable of. But yeah, there's a couple more in a row. Like Tom Walsh has been I saw him like I think he had an Instagram post or something like that talking about a busy month coming up, like it's just one event to the next kind of thing for a little while. So there will be a little bit of Tom Walsh remaining in the cycle, and I think maybe I will write about this for the email, which will be out by the time anyone hears this, but haven't written it yet at the time of recording. But Paul Coll won the British Open as well in squash, and I think there's a nice little angle to that as well, because I think that he's the first Kiwi male to win the British Open. I think, I don't know, a Susan Devoy or someone must have won it before, because we have had a female champion of that tournament. But the first Kiwi male to do it, big win, I think in the semi-final, beating a dude he'd lost to like something 12 out of 14 times or something in his career, and he beat the dude, get into the final, and then won the final, and then, you know, scenes ensued. I think that's kind of a cool one. There's the timing of that as well, like the timing of that achievement, because, you know, if this was a Commonwealth Games year, and next year I assume will be a Commonwealth Games year, then squash would be pretty high up in the profiles, because he would be competing for a medal at a Com Games. However, squash is not an Olympic sport, so he was not at all in the conversation over the last month or two. So it's kind of cool that he gets, like, after the Olympics are finished, he competing at a sport that arguably could well be an Olympic sport, but isn't. That he gets his little moment as well is pretty cool.
It is indeed. We also have wildcard. The NRL keeps on trucking, and your Dragons are one of 6 teams, including the Warriors, who are trying to chase a 1 spot in the top 8, I think. The Sharks, Titans, and Raiders all have 20 points, and the Warriors, Dragons, and Tigers all have 18 points. They're all competing for 8th spot, where the Sharks are at now, on 20 points ahead by points differential. How are you feeling about the Dragons chasing that top 8 spot?
The Dragons, I believe, let me check the fixtures just to remind myself, but there we go. Lost by 18, lost by 18, lost by 8, lost by 36, lost by 22, lost by 14, and then before that, won by 1 in a miracle comeback against the Warriors in round 16. So remember that game and think about how much those 2 competition points would be so valuable to the Warriors at this point in time. Consider the way, the manner in which they pretty much threw away that game against the Dragons in the last 10 minutes. And maybe console yourself, Warriors fans, with the knowledge that the Dragons since then have gone into absolute capitulation mode. There was the ill-fated barbecue, which cost Paul Vaughan his Dragons career, and obviously he just immediately went and signed with the Bulldogs. They're playing a different fullback every week because they've already let Matt Duffy go he's signing with the Bulldogs next season. They dropped him for a month and brought him back for a game they thought they should win. And then after playing Jack Bird and bloody a couple young fellas and all sorts and fullback before that in the interim, and they had they had so many suspensions from the barbecue thing that they couldn't even serve all the suspensions at once. They had to filter them out over the course of 2 or 3 games. They've got a whole bunch of players who maybe, there's other dudes like Corey Norman who isn't going to be there next season, still playing a big role. Ben Hunt's been the best player all season. He's injured at the moment. Tried to make Jack DeBellin captain a couple of weeks ago, the coach did, despite everything that entails. And yeah, but when I say utter capitulation mode, I mean utter capitulation mode. So the feeling about the Dragons is not a positive one at the moment, and there's absolutely no chance whatsoever that they're going to make the top 8. Having said that, they really should have, because after the bye week following that Warriors game, what did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 defeats in a row now, and they're still only 2 points out of the top 8. Well, that just shows you how quickly that whole thing derailed. But to be honest, it's not like the signs weren't there from the very start. But so it goes. At least the Warriors lost a bit of a heartbreaker against the Broncos yesterday, but at least they're scrapping to the finish line. The Dragons are doing the exact opposite.
And this is So there's two big rugby league NRL angles to follow right now. NRL keeps going on, and from an Aotearoa perspective, you've got this situation here that we're talking about where the Warriors and 5 other teams are chasing that 8th spot. Your Dragons wildcard, they face Cowboys and Rabbitohs. The Warriors face Raiders and Titans. And of the 6 teams in contention for this one playoff spot, the Warriors are the only team who don't play against the top 8 team. So the Sharks face Broncos and Storm. Titans face Knights, top 8, Warriors. Raiders face Warriors, Roosters, top 8. Dragons face Cowboys, Rabbitohs, top 8. And the Tigers, they play against the Panthers, top 8, and the Bulldogs. So that suggests that the Warriors have the easiest draw of those teams and the best chance probably of grabbing 2 wins, which I think if any of these teams are going to solidify themselves in that 8th spot, you'd need to win both games. And in theory, the Warriors have a chance to do that with that draw. You also missed out the Dragons, probably the most mediocre Kiwi-NRL team in the competition, which always frames NRL discussions. They are...
Yep, chuck that on the pile.
They're an odd group down in Dragons territory. That Warriors game against the Broncos yesterday was you could just tell in the first half, the energy, the intensity, the speed, the line speed, which has never really existed, but sometimes exists. It's not there. The creativity wasn't there. The whole attitude just wasn't there, and that's not surprising. Let's be honest, they won 3 games in a row, playing at a fairly high level for where the Warriors are at this season. And I think, same with Lyda Coll, maybe it's I think just the consistency in these top leagues is pretty hard to nail down. Lyda Coll had 3 good results, then a poor result. And those 3 good results came after 3 poorer results. The Warriors won 3 games in a row after an emotional farewell kind of situation, and then they didn't quite have the same energy. In saying that, they scored more tries than the Broncos, and Reece Walsh kicked 1 out of 5 conversions, and they lost by 2 points. So it was a typically cursed Warriors game, and a game. I'm just relying on that cursed idea instead of saying frustrating. Because I think Warriors fans are always going to be it's frustrating. It was a frustrating loss. And that's the feeling that I could feel arising in me. And that's when I know the curse is involved, because it was a typically cursed game and performance. I mean, Anthony Milford just comes out of nowhere and he's playing razzle-dazzle. It's you're leaving the Broncos. You don't give a shit. Why are you suddenly playing your best game of the last 2 years against the Warriors when the Warriors need to win? Just shit like that was happening. Let alone typical normal Warriors curse stuff with referee decisions and whatever else. So it's very convoluted. So I don't know what the Warriors are going to do in their remaining 2 games against the Raiders and Titans. That's going to be pretty interesting. Hopefully Matt Lodge comes back. I'd like to see Matt Lodge and Adam Whynua-Blake play together in the same forward pack. That is a great combination, I believe. Which of those teams do you actually think is going to get that 8th spot wildcard? Sharks, Titans, Raiders, Dragons, Tigers, and the Warriors. Sharks, Titans, Raiders all have 20 points. Warriors, Dragons, Tigers all have 18 points.
Yeah, the points difference isn't particularly kind to the Warriors there, which is when you get into this situation, points difference is often as good as an extra win. And the Warriors are at minus 115.
They did gain it. They did
actually, because the Dragons lost by so much.
They gained a spot.
They fell behind them.
And the Tigers lost. The Dragons had 40 put on them by the Roosters, and the Tigers had 50 put on them by the Sharks. So all 3 teams lost, but the Warriors gained a spot. How about that?
and the Tigers play the Panthers this week, so I would suggest they do have the Bulldogs last, but that's not going to matter if they lose. Like anyone who's on 18 points, so the Warriors, Dragons, Tigers, absolutely have to win both games. Like, especially because of the points difference, it's just they're not going to overcome anything else. You can't rely on the Sharks, Titans, and Raiders all losing both of their last games. I think we can rule out the Tigers. I think we can rule out the Dragons. I'm not quite ruling out the Warriors, but I think it's unlikely. Looking at the remaining fixture lists, I think the Titans might like the Titans playing the Knights and the Warriors. If the Warriors lose this week, and are therefore out of it, then Titans will be playing the Warriors at home at a point. Well, at home, so whatever that means. So they are from Queensland, though, aren't they? So that helps. I can see that as probably the most favourable of the run-ins, but then you never bloody know with the NRL because anyone can beat anyone on any day, and you just you can't really predict it. And it's been a season where like there's been a divide between the top. I'd say it was the top 4 clubs at the beginning, and then once Tom Trbojevic and Jake Trbojevic, whichever one it. Tom Trbojevic, the fast one. Once he came back for Manly, it sort of became a top 5. But for all of that, for all the big hidings that we've seen from like those top teams just smashing everybody else, and the so-called like the just the lack of competitiveness sort of thing, it's a pretty wide open race for that 8th spot, and whoever comes 8th is almost certainly losing first round of the playoffs. So I don't really see any other alternative there. But like, it's still nice to get there, and there's 6 teams with 2 weeks to go who have we're ranging from realistic to hopeful, but like still 6 teams who have a chance to get there. Is for all the lack of competitiveness supposedly elsewhere, the conversation about the NRL this season, this is a nice place to be in from just like a spectator. Sit back, put your feet up, see what happens over the last few games. So many games that have like over those last 2 weeks, there's just going to be so many games that have relevance for a finals hunt. Like that's kind of what you want to see.
And all those teams, except for the Dragons, have like some Kiwi-NRL angle that is interesting as well. These are the mediocre teams of the NRL, but it's still fun, as you said. Like, it's still exciting, something to keep your eye on from a just purely sports fan perspective. And then you go to the top of the NRL, and there's Kiwi-NRL angles for every team. So the Storm, I wrote last year that they've got a pretty heavy All Blacks connection. Obviously, you got Jesse Bromwich, Jerome Hughes, Kenny Bromwich, Asafa Solomona, Remus Smith. All those dudes, fantastic. I love it. Love the Storm. Love everything about their Kiwi-NRL angle. Panthers is all about James Fisher-Harris. Didn't play on the weekend. Is coming back from his wife, partner, gave birth to a child. And I think he had a little niggly injury, so he will return. And he's one of the best forwards in the whole NRL from Northland. And he'll be back playing for the Panthers. Rabbitohs, you got the Benji Marshall factor. You might get Jackson Paulo from, I think he's a Northcote Tigers junior in Auckland. He might get a few games on the wing, but the Rabbitohs, probably the weakest Kiwi-NRL team there, but they do have Benji. Roosters, full to the brim of Kiwi-NRL talent, and you got the veterans, Warea Hargraves, Isaac Liu, Tokiaho, then you got Joey Manu, Satili Tupanuia. You might get Nolfahu White playing another game. Roosters, always a good team to follow. Roosters and Storm have the best combination of quality organizations, quality team performances, and very high Kiwi-NRL contributions. I read about the Sea Eagles this morning because they've got Kieran Foran playing typical Kieran Foran. Not quite peak Kieran Foran, but close to resurgent Kieran Foran. Marty Tapau is doing what he does best as well. So they've got the veterans doing some best work of their careers. You got Morgan Harper, who I wrote this morning. He had one grandfather who played for the All Blacks, and he had another grandfather who played for the Kiwis. One grandfather, I think I don't know time-wise, but like I don't know if it's great-grandfather or grandfather, but one grandfather apparently played for the All Blacks in like 1913, and the Kiwis' grandfather, he played for the Kiwis in the 1920s, so he's rugby league royalty. Rugby royalty, sorry. Then you've got Josh Alawai. Harper and Alawai were both at other clubs, moved to the Seagulls. Alawai left the Tigers, Harper left the Bulldogs. Toafafoa Sipley, he's coming up. Christian Tuipulotu's there, offering depth as well. So the Seagulls are a fun team. Like Tom Trbojevic, he's fantastic. They've got like Jason Saab, Ruben Garrick. They're all fantastic. They're all entertaining. Very robust forward pack, but you've got a really heavy Kiwi-NRL angle there as well. The Eels is a bit more what's going to happen, because the Eels have been in a bit of a slump and everyone's talking about them over in Australia, and that is really interesting because you've got Dylan Brown, Isaiah Papali'i, Maratini Okore, Makahisi Makatoa is a bit older, but you've got a group of young Kiwi-NRL players who are all regular starters in the NRL, play at a high level in the NRL, but they're kind of caught up in this Parramatta Eels underperforming situation, so I'll be fascinated to see how they respond. And the Knights, Jura Momosia made his debut for the Knights on the weekend. He is the 17th Kiwi-NRL debutant of 2021, and hopefully he gets a few more games this season, because the Knights, their Kiwi-NRL crew is more fringe. You got Momosia made his debut. Simi Sasangi is hunting for a utility spot. He's usually outside the top 17, but on an extended bench. Stafford Toa hasn't played on the wing for a few weeks, so the Knights are probably the least fun team there, just because I don't think you're going to see many Kiwi-NRL players actually play in these next few weeks, but they're there. And then you've got that group that we've been talking about. So the top 6 or 7 teams, there are really cool Kiwi-NRL angles to follow, and we'll be discussing those in depth when we do our Kiwi-NRL podcast later in the week as well.
Yeah, and we didn't do the normal variety show format today, obviously, but we do like a good stat in those ones, and one of the, like, an all-timer of a statistic that I saw over the weekend is when the Storm won their 19th game in a row, which also is an incredible statistic. Jesse Bromwich was playing his 269th game and recorded his 200th career victory, which is the fastest guy ever to 200 wins. And like, just the maths of that almost don't add up. Like, he's won 200 of his 269 NRL games, which, I mean, I don't even, there's not even any more further context that needs adding to that. Like, 200 wins out of 269 games is just like, let that simmer and think about what an incredible strike rate that is. It's like almost 75%, like 3 out of 4 games, basically.
I don't think Jared Waerea-Hargreaves would have a similar record, but I have been thinking about them two together. Like, they are the veteran forwards of the two best teams of the last decade. Like, that's pretty important, you know. And when you think about how that role has changed over the years, because you're going back to Jesse Bromwich, he came up through the Melbourne Storm wrestle focus era, and for the NRL, that was just the time when the game was slower. And then you get into the phase where Taumalolo and Tapau really stand out as freakish talents, because the game was so slow and so gritty and grimy that when you get a big lad with footwork and speed and power, as they have, it stands out. Like, it's emphatic. And Bromwich and Waerea-Hargreaves moved through that whole phase and different phases to get to where they are now, when the game is fastest it's ever been, and it's designed to be fast, and they're still playing, and they're still winning. It's really impressive.
Waerea-Hargreaves is, where are we? 258 appearances, this is according to rugbyleagueproject.org. 258 appearances, 161 wins, so a 62% win rate, which is still pretty outstanding over the course of an NRL career as long as that, especially when you consider, like, I can remember people talking about him like he was on the way down like 5 years ago. And the only other, like, this, well, not the only other, but like the person that immediately springs to mind is not the obvious comparison you'd think for Jared Waerea-Hargreaves, but like that's what the conversation has been about Tom Brady. Like, you can remember Tom Brady 5 years ago, even longer than that, when people were saying like, oh, he's lost his arm, he can't throw accurately over 20 yards anymore, this dude's on the way down, and yet he continues to win championships somehow. I don't know exactly how. It helps when you're playing for the best teams every year, but like he's one of the major reasons why they're one of the best teams. Like, it's not just what he does, it's what he inspires in others, the fact that like good players want to play with him, that kind of thing. And like, JWH is like, I don't know if you watched the Dragons game, Dragons Roosters, but like there was a point in the first half where it was, I can't remember who he was tackling, but it was his own dude who comes over the top to sort of complete the tackle. And Waerea-Hargreaves gets like, he gets bent back over both of his knees, and he looks like he's been folded in half, and there was an incredible camera shot of him from like behind, so he gets folded backwards to where like his face is upside down, like he's the bloody Exorcist kid or something, freaking out on the bed there and spitting up green vomit, and he's like screaming as he's folded backwards, and the commentators are going like, oh, this could be serious, this could be like ACL, MCL in both legs or something like that. He gets a bit of treatment, carries on with the game, plays 60 minutes, and is excellent as always. Like, he's the bloody, like, it looked like a tackle that would have like crippled a mere mortal for the rest of their lives, and he's just like, after a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of a rub down and a chance to catch his breath again or whatever, he's just like, nah, carry on, keep up my usual standards, play out the rest of the game. Like, that was just ridiculous.
And Waerea-Hargreaves is averaging 145 meters per game this season, which is the highest of his career.
Like, he's actually got better over the last 3 or 4 years. Props don't do that anymore. Like, that doesn't happen. That's such a rarity to have like that resurgence.
But weird, like, so Bromwich, he's like 102 meters per game, which is well down on, like, he's got a couple years where he's averaging 150 meters and 50 offloads in a season. Like, that's ridiculous. And that's been my internal dilemma, is like, stats like Waerea-Hargreaves is playing 80 minutes in some games as well, and it's just like, Bromwich, I can't use those same stats for Bromwich, but I know Bromwich is the most important Storm player to some extent, like he's the leader. As you referred to, he's got the winning record, and yeah, all the flashy players are really important, and of course, team system, Storm system, Roosters system, but you're only as good as your forward pack, and Jesse Bromwich has been in that Storm forward pack since 2010. He has played over 20 games in all but 2 of his seasons, which is also ridiculous. So, yeah, just amazing. But we'll save those yarns for the NRL podcast wildcard. Kia kaha to all the beautiful people around Aotearoa and the world. Church